Well, good day to everyone, and welcome to our ManageEngine Active Directory webinar. I think we have a very compelling topic today. I know that some of you might be looking at JIT and JEA wondering what is that, but that was part of the goal, is to try to pique everyone's interest about technologies that Microsoft has, and then to discuss those technologies, and then also solutions if you decide not to use them, because the technologies that Microsoft is proposing are actually very well needed, but sometimes not easy to implement. So that's really what today is all about. We're going to talk about security. We're actually going to talk about a wide range of security that you need to consider for your Active Directory environment. Before we get started, let's talk about some logistics. First of all, this is being recorded, so if you have other people in your office that you want to see this, we will be sending out a link to everyone that's registered. If you do have any questions, please use your GoToWebinar panel and use the Q&A portion, and we will be answering those questions along the line as we go. There is a great team behind me, and they will be answering your questions as we go along. If we do not get to your question for some reason, we will be trying desperately to get you an answer to your questions after the webinar. A little bit of more information about me. As I said, my name is Derek Melber, and I am the technical evangelist for the Active Directory team here at ManageEngine. And really what that means is I have the great opportunity to go around the world helping organizations, helping administrators better understand Active Directory, and basically just try to be more efficient and more secure in their Active Directory environments. Microsoft has given us some great tools, but they only go so far sometimes. So what we try to do is we try to come in and enhance the tools that Microsoft currently have, and also provide additional tools and solutions that allow you to do better at your job every day. We don't have a ton of time together today, so I do want to point you to some additional resources that are free to you to access after this. First of all, I want to point you to our Active Directory blog. If you go to our ManageEngine.com website, go to support, go to blogs, you'll see here that we blog usually once a week, but sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And what you'll see is that we have things labeled by area. So if you want to come in and you want to search on Active Directory, you can actually do that, and it will show for you just the Active Directory results, which is kind of nice. That way you just see what's in Active Directory. Now, of course, if you have other tools that you look at, please search on those as well, but we try to get you information. This is a blog that I just wrote right here. It was just posted, I think, last Friday, this one right here. So we try to do things that are questions that people give us in our seminars and user conferences, so please look at that. Another resource that I want to point you to, and this is actually the foundation of today, is if you go to our products page and you go to security hardening, you will see that we have a site dedicated to security hardening. And if you go down a little bit and you start reading here, you'll read about JIT and JEA, and there's actually a video. And because this particular webinar is so centered on this video, I'm going to encourage you all to go watch this. Don't watch it now, because I want you to hear what I'm saying, but please watch it afterwards. This is a vital video that you must see. It is Microsoft talking about JIT and JEA, and what I want you to do is I want you to kind of counterbalance what I'm talking about with JIT and JEA from what you see in a live demonstration. So please go look at that video. We'll also be talking about the rest of this website and how we can leverage this information. We've worked pretty hard on this website for you, getting you information, and there's some amazing information on the site. So please go take a look at this. A third resource I want to point you to is my email address. My email address, as well as any other email address that you have on the Active Directory team, or really anyone at ManageEngine. We are dedicated to our customers. We're dedicated to Active Directory, and really our number one goal is to help organizations and administrators better understand Active Directory and become more efficient with it. As I said, I get to travel the world. I've been to about 10 different countries this year, maybe one or two more, I don't really remember. But you'll see here where we've been. You also see a little bit of where we're going. I know this is mainly for the UK and Europe, but if for some reason you happen to be in San Francisco and or New York at the beginning of June, which is next week, please come see us. Also, we will be back in Europe probably in the September, October timeframe. So please come to one of our seminars, our user conferences. It's a great way to get information, meet other people that are having similar issues, and just network. So without further ado, I'm pretty excited about today's information, and let's really get an idea of what JIT and JEA is. And the way that I want to start with this is I want to start with the concept of why JIT and JEA was really created. JIT, just in time, and JEA, just enough access, both technologies from Microsoft, were created because we are under attack. Now, we're under attack, but many of us aren't able to secure our environments the way we need to, because security is not convenient. And many people on this webinar right now, and as I go around the world talking with administrators, everyone has their own story, whether it be passwords, whether it be group membership, whether it be privileged access. We have users in our environment that have too many privileges. But if we reduce those privileges, then it's going to be a burden for that user to gain access to a resource. They might have to log off and log back on as a different account that has privileges. They may have to take an additional 15 seconds to do something, which gives them a privilege. And this time, in their view, really is something that they're concerned about. So one of the things that we need to consider is how we are going to ensure that we get good security. And I'm going to challenge everyone on this webinar today to really take a step back so we can take 2 steps forward with security, because we need to create a secure environment even if it isn't as convenient as we think, okay? And the reason we have to secure our environments is because we are under attack. I don't care if it's social media, if it's insurance, military, government. The breach statistics are out of control. We are getting attacked at a rampant pace, and the amount of information that's being stolen, shared illegally, is just at an astronomical number, and we need to reduce this. And really, when we think about it, data breaches usually equal either privileged access or some security misconfiguration. So with regard to these security configurations, we need to take action. Now, the next couple of slides you're going to look at are actually graphics from a Microsoft presentation. This was at Ignite a year and a half ago, and they were so compelling that I wanted to share them with you. So I want to make sure that we understand who is producing these videos, these graphics, and it's Microsoft. So there's a lot of numbers here. We have $500 billion for total cost. We have $4 billion or $4 million per breach, but really I want to point you in the middle. The middle of this graphic is very compelling. It says 146 days is the average number that an attacker is within your network before it's detected. Now think about that. Right now, some of you on this webinar have someone that's in your network that you don't know was there. And they might have been there for a week, they might have been there for 3 months, and you're not aware. Now this is Microsoft talking about their operating system and the fact that we don't know when people are in Active Directory. That's a huge problem, because if someone's in Active Directory, then they potentially could have administrative access. But if we think about this idea of administrative access, we really need to pay attention, because this next slide, again a Microsoft slide, is a timeline. Now again, this is Microsoft's timeline for a breach in Active Directory. Now the green is an undisclosed amount of time. We really don't know how long people take to prepare for an attack. But once they attack, the first host is compromised. According to Microsoft, it is 2 days or less before they obtain domain admin privileges. Now I hope that that catches your attention. It caught my attention when I heard this. Now, what does this mean? This means that we as a whole are not securing our Active Directory environments enough, and we are allowing attackers into our environment too easily. Now, once they have domain admin credentials, we don't know that until 5 months later. That is not good. So we have a problem. Microsoft knows this is a problem. But really, at the root of this problem is privileged access, is security configurations. Now, if you just consider securing your environment by taking away privileges from users that don't need privileges, you can have some amazing results. For example, if you just take your users out of the local administrators group on their desktop, 100% of all Internet Explorer vulnerabilities go away. Now think about that. This is not a sophisticated configuration. This is not a complex configuration. You're just taking users out of local administrators on their desktop. Now, if we go back to this slide, what do you think that first host is that's compromised? It's not a domain controller. It's not a server. It's a desktop. So again, if we can go to the root of the breach and we can secure our desktops, we can have great impact on the overall reduction on breaches for our organizations. And it doesn't take complex configurations. Now, of course, Microsoft is trying to solve these problems with security configurations. And one of the things that they're doing is they're trying to manage privileged identities. And really what they're doing with this is they're implementing, and they're trying to have you implement just in time and just enough administrative access, JIT and JEA. JIT and JEA is a direct result of Microsoft helping you manage your privileged identities, privileges. Now, before you heard about this webinar, JIT and JEA, how many of you have even heard of JIT and JEA? Now, I was just in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 different European cities over the last 3 weeks, talking with over 1,000 administrators, and I asked the same question to them. Less than 10 people out of 1,000 had heard of JIT and JEA. Now, that is a major problem. If these are the flagship Microsoft technologies, how come we haven't heard of them? Well, we haven't heard of them because there are some stumbling blocks. First of all, JIT and JEA require a dedicated bastion forest. That means that whatever you have now is not enough. I don't care if you have multiple domains, multiple forests, it's not enough. You must install an additional forest beyond what you have now for JIT and JEA to work. Now, how many of us really want to go and build another forest? Well, very few. I've had one person out of the last 2,000 plus raise their hand. And I don't know why they were raising their hand. I mean, who wants to install more? Oh, and by the way, the only way for you to administer and implement JIT and JEA is to use PowerShell. Now, I'm not saying that you should just believe me. I'm asking you to go watch the video. When we're done with this, go watch that video. It'll explain all the details and actually give you a live demonstration of JIT and JEA, showing you exactly how the technology works, how you implement the technology, what you must run. It'll open your eyes to what Microsoft is really pushing as their flagship security to reduce privileges, to secure your Active Directory environment. Well, we, as an organization, We as Active Directory experts, we as an organization of Active Directory experts that want to help secure Active Directory implementations felt that it wasn't the approach to take. So what we've done is we built the site. Now I'm going to go back to the site for you. And you'll see here that we have a video of our own. We have a link to the video that I'm telling you to go watch. But at the bottom of this page is the core of what I want to focus on today. We built this right here so that you have solutions on how to implement good security and track good security. Because the idea of security is we must implement security and then maintain that security. The only way to maintain security is to track the access. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how to secure your environment without the need for JIT and JEA. It's free. You just have to implement the good security, but you have to know how to do it. Now, let's first of all talk about privileged access. Now, when we talk about privileged access, we must talk about privileged users, both local and in Active Directory. Now, the privileged users you have locally, first of all, is the administrator account on every workstation and every server, and then any user that you put in the local administrators group. That's why I was talking about your users. Take the users out of the local administrators group, and now what you're doing is you're securing privileged access. Now, within Active Directory, you have quite a few privileged users. Now, first of all, within Active Directory, and if we jump in here to Active Directory users and computers, you have the original administrator account. Now, some ideas around this account. You'll notice that this account right here, if I go to is only part of domain users. This is not the original administrator account. I have renamed it to James Bond. And you'll notice here that James Bond is actually part of all of these administrative groups. Now, the reason that I did this is that, again, I want to create a secure environment. Just like taking the user out of local administrators, security does not have to be complicated. Now let's look at the result of this. I have renamed administrator to James Bond and then created a new administrator account. If we talk about the tracking of this, how does this help me? Well, for example, if I didn't tell anyone in the organization that I've renamed administrator to James Bond and they try to log on as administrator, what does that say? That means that they are trying to hack into administrator. Now, how do I track that? Well, actually tracking this is actually pretty easy and straightforward. I just set up auditing, and the auditing shows up in the security log in Event Viewer. So out of these 150,000 events, I can track to see if someone is trying to log on as administrator. Now, this is where the problem starts. The problem is, how do I find that administrator failed to log on? I mean, there is no option for a report here. There's no reporting. I can't right-click and run a report. It doesn't exist. So what we have done, again, as I said earlier, is we take over where Microsoft stops. And we actually allow you to leverage that information that you're tracking, and you can run reports on users that have failed to log on, right? User logon activity, logon failures based on bad password. So you can look at a variety of different reports. Now, if I look at this report and I say over the last, I want to know people that have failed to log on due to a bad password. Now, this is a year of information. So I'm going into the database of information that's been gathered by leveraging this information right here. So the information that's here, you'll notice, only goes back so far. So what we need to do is we need to create a solution that allows us to look at information from a range. Now, there's probably quite a bit of information. So let's go back 6 months. So if we go back 6 months and we look at a report of failed passwords over the last 6 months, you will notice that I now get a list of users over the last 6 months. You'll notice how many failures and which client's IP address they were using. Now, this is some pretty powerful information, but really the power comes in you being notified, because I can set up alerts, and I now can get email addresses, or I'm sorry, emails sent to me when certain thresholds are met. So when Aaron or anyone fails to log on X number of times in a certain amount of time, I can get an email. That could include administrator, and that could include James Bond. So now what we're doing is we're actually looking at privileged users, and we're not only securing them, we're tracking them. But we need to do the same thing with our groups, because we need to go in and we need to secure these groups. Now, if we just look at Active Directory, right? So I go back in here to Active Directory users and computers. We have domain admins. We have enterprise admins. We have schema admins. If we go over here to our built-in, we have administrators, backup operators. We have so many groups in Active Directory that need to be secured. Again, how do we track these group members? No one has time to constantly come in here and go to the members to make sure they're correct. So why not create reports that allow us to look at admin groups and when they're modified? So now in the last month, I can look at a report of groups that have been modified. I can get alerts, right? I mean, I can set up alerts for all of this information. Modified admin groups right here. I can customize this. So now when a group is modified that has administrator privileges, I can get an alert. Now what does that look like? Well, let me show you. If someone comes in here to any of my groups that have administrator privileges and they modify this, okay? Let's say that someone is added or removed. You need to know that. What I have done is I have set up an alert for this such that as soon as that occurs, look at this alert right here. In real time, I am alerting in the dashboard, and I can also send an email. Now you'll notice here that all of my alerts have the ability to send an email notification. The advanced configuration is our threshold. I was just telling you about the threshold with failed logons. So with the right tool, you can actually set up good tracking. But if you aren't tracking your privileged access, I guarantee you have no idea what's happening. So what we need to do first is we need to understand how privileges are granted. Privileges are normally granted based on group membership. I just showed you how to track that. Privileges are granted based on user rights. Well, how do we track user rights? Again, with the right tool, you can set up alerts that when user rights are modified, look at right here, when user rights are modified, you can get a notification. Delegation, right? Now, delegation and permissions are really the same thing, a modification of an access control list. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to show you how to also track delegation and permission changes. So the 4 major ways that privileges are granted, you can track each and every one of them. And you need to track these because the tracking of these allow you to make sure that you know what the current security is. There's no reason to set up a bastion forest. Just make sure you know who has privileges. So we need auditing configured. That's a Microsoft technology. With the auditing being configured in a right tool like ADAudit Plus for Manage Engine, you have reporting capabilities. If we could report using Microsoft technology, I would show you that. But the best that you have is right here in Event Viewer. And there are so many limitations of Event Viewer, I can't really talk about that as a reporting solution. And certainly, Event Viewer doesn't give you the alerting that you need in real time and granular alerting. So what I'm suggesting is you use a combination of Microsoft technology with other technologies that give you the solution that you need. Because if you just use the Microsoft technologies, you're going to find out they're expensive, you're going to find out they're limited, and in many cases, I don't want to say most, but many cases, they don't actually give you a solution. They only go so far. Event Viewer is a perfect example. So what we need to do is think about security in a way that allows us to get a hold of what we have in place, to make sure we know what's in place. Now, beyond privileged access, we also need to track and secure other aspects of Active Directory. This is where JIT and JEA falls short. JIT and JEA only deals with privileged access. But what about user accounts? We need to know about user accounts local and in Active Directory. We must get a listing of users that must change their password or users that don't have to change their password. We need to know when users are changing their password, the last password change date, the last logon, when users have set their password. We need to know about users that have never logged on. Now, if we just take a look at some of these solutions or issues and we go to Active Directory, how do you run reports on these things? I mean, how do I get a list of users and their last password change date? I don't know if that's possible. Yeah, sure, I could use PowerShell, but I want something that's simple. What about users that have never logged on? Well, believe it or not, you can actually do that in Active Directory. Let me show you. So, never logged on users, this is a saved query that I created. I'm actually going to show you what the query looks like. Now, this is what the query looked like. I'm the one that developed this query. It's an LDAP query, and the idea is that I now can get a list of users that have never logged on. But don't you want this in a report? Don't you want this in a daily report? Sure, you could come in here and you could right-click and you can refresh this daily, but I don't want you to make even that much effort. Why not use a tool that allows you to generate reports and then automate those reports? This is ADManager Plus, right? Users never logged on. This is a way that you can actually create reports in a way that's extremely easy. Now I can export these as a PDF. I can actually schedule this report. So instead of having to remember to go in, why not just generate reports on a daily basis? That way you and anyone else that wants to view these reports can do that. I mean, look at these reports that we have. Inactive users. You get to define users and their time frame of when they haven't logged on before or the last time they logged on. You can look at accounts that are set to never expire, disabled accounts. I can look at the real last logon. These are things that are very difficult to do if you're trying to use Microsoft technologies, but you need these reports. And I just don't think that this is the tool to do this. You can't do everything in saved queries. So when you look at Active Directory as a raw, I mean, you don't have these options. You either have to use PowerShell, you have to get some of their quirky tool, or again, what we at ManageEngine have done is we have built a solution so that you can easily, with a single click, go and get these reports, share the reports. You can actually delegate that anyone else can generate these reports. I mean, our delegation allows you to go in and the new roles that you create, you can actually do 80 reports, any of these reports. You can grant to your auditors that they can generate all of these reports. They have no ability to change anything. They can just run these reports. That is a solution. That is giving us securing and tracking of user accounts. Okay? Now, other things that you need to track. As administrators, not just your auditors, you need to know when a user is created. You need to know when security settings change. You need to know when accounts are locked out, failed logons. All of these things are important for you to track because they give you insight into potential attacks. They give you insight into security settings that are potentially incorrect, opening up a breach. All of these tracking of user accounts is possible with the right tool, right? I mean, why not have reports that allow you to go in and say, I want to know if a user has been created, recently created users in the last 30 days. Don't you want this report? Don't you want to know when users have been modified? Recently modified users. Why not get a report of what's been modified? Get alerts on critical aspects. You can do it with the right tool. Now, at this point, we've talked about privileged access. We've talked about user accounts and their security. What about passwords? You need to know when group policy changes with the domain password policy. You need to know if fine-grained password policies change. You must understand attacks and strategies to make sure you implement better security. Now, let's first of all talk about how we make sure that we know what our domain password policy is. First and foremost, we need to understand that if I go into group policy management and I go to the default domain policy and I look at this report right here on the password policy, this is not where we need to look to see what our password policy is. Now let me prove this to you. This is the default domain policy password policy right here. This right here is the actual password policy that's in place in my domain. This is reality. This is what some people report on. You will notice there is a major difference. I don't even require a password right now. You have to understand how to make these reports. You need the report to make sure the configuration is secure. But you also need to make sure that you maintain that. But let's just talk about users, right? Let's go back and let's look at Active Directory. How do I know what this user right here has as a password policy? I mean, can you right-click, go to its properties, and look at password? No, you can't. Can I look at the object itself and see what it is? Nope. Can I look at the attribute editor? No, you can't. How do I get a report on what each user has for a password policy? Again, with the right tool, it's a couple of clicks. AD reports, user reports, all users. You will notice that we give you the ability to look at password and all the other configurations. PSO applied, okay? Now, oops, I didn't add that in. Hold on one second. PSO applied, I add that in. Okay. Now you will notice that if there's no PSO applied, password setting object, these are fine-grained password policies, they have to be using the default domain or the domain password policy through group policy. This is an extremely powerful report. So the idea is that we have to know what's in place. We also have to understand the limitations. If we go back here and we look at our password policy, what are the limitations here? Well, can we import a dictionary to make sure users can't use dictionary words? Nope. Can we make sure users don't use patterns? Nope. How about incremental? Nope. You don't have these options. This is it. What you see is what you get. I know you haven't heard this term in a while. WYSIWYG, right? What you see is what you get. That's it. Microsoft has not enhanced their password policy controls ever. Well, guess what we did? We did it for you. We have a tool called AD Self-Service Plus, and we give you something called Password Policy Enforcer. The Password Policy Enforcer allows you to import a dictionary, allows you to use patterns, allows you to force special characters, allows you to go in and increase the password controls to make sure that you are securing your environment. JIT and JEA can't do this. Microsoft can't do this. We can do this. We also allow you to have multiple enforcers in the same domain. So that means you can have multiple password policies in the same domain. You have to start looking beyond what Microsoft gives you because we're being attacked. It was 7 billion breaches. Data being breached, 7 billion since 2013. That number continues to grow. We need to reduce that. We want to make sure that our company isn't being breached. Okay? We need to alert if the password policy changes. Right now, everyone on this webinar, if your password policy changes, how do you know? Well, I know because I have an alert set up that if, right here, my password policy changes, the domain password policy, or fine-grained password policy changed, I get an email. It's easy with the right tool. Okay? Now, one more area, resource access. Now, resource here could mean a bunch of different things, because a resource really is just something that has an access control list that someone can access. I break it down into 3 areas: files and folders, which would include databases, any file, doesn't matter. Active Directory, which is an Active Directory database, the contents within there, users, groups, computers, right? And then group policy delegation. We need to secure all these areas. How do you do that? Well, you need tools, okay? Now, let's just talk about how in the world you get a listing of an access control list, right? If I have a folder over here, let's say my audit docs, how do I get a listing of the access control list? Well, I could come in here and I could go to security, I could go to advanced, and I could go to any of these settings, right? And I could try to look at the permissions, but this becomes difficult. I mean, there's no real option here. Now, of course, I could use a command line, right? I could go to the command line, and I could look at cackles, and I could do C audit docs, and there it gives me the ACL. But this is really kind of cryptic, right? I mean, what is OI and CI and all these things? So why not have a tool? Again, I sound like a broken record, but again, when Microsoft doesn't give us these solutions, I need to generate NTFS reports. I need to be able to look at permissions for folders. I need to be able to go in and look at this information. So I need to have tools that allow me to do that. I also need to be able to track this, right? With ADAudit Plus and with ADAudit Plus, I want to be able to go in and look at files that are being modified, right? In the last 6 months, I need to be able to look at a report of files that are being modified. I need to be able to set up alerts so that I can get information about things that are being modified. When files and folders that are critical for my organization are accessed, I need an email on that. If someone tries to delete a file, right? Failed attempts to delete files, right here. I need reports like this. I need alerts on activity like this. So for your files and folders, you need to be able to do this. For Active Directory, right? For delegation. If I go in here to delegation, I mean, I have the delegate control wizard. How do I know when this is run? It's very difficult. You cannot rely on the event viewer for this because it doesn't give you the granular reporting that you need. It doesn't give you the alerting that you need. But wait a minute, if I have the correct report and alert, I can see when OU ACLs change. That is powerful. When group policy permissions change, that is powerful. I need to be able to generate reports, historical reports on when OU permissions change. I want to know over the last 6 months which permissions have changed. I need the old and the new setting. I need to be able to see the details around what is going on with this. This is the level of detail that you need. You're not going to get it from here. The event viewer cannot show you this information. But every single one of you, I guarantee you, when I showed you securing resource access files and folders and Active Directory delegation, I perked your interest. Why? Because you know this is almost impossible to do with Microsoft. ADAudit Plus, ADManager Plus give you the solution to secure and track all of the access that you need. If you need it in real time, go look at File Audit Plus. These are tools that we have enhanced where Microsoft leaves off to give you the solution. You need to be able to track and alert on these types of access. For those of you that work in Europe, GDPR is coming. I just got an email this morning. Organizations need to start preparing for GDPR. It's 1 year away. This is part of that. This is part of GDPR. You need a tool that can help you with this. So where have we been this morning or this afternoon for some of you? Well, we've talked about how Microsoft is trying to solve our security issues, but they only go so far. JIT and JEA only talks about privileged access, which is important, but it's expensive, it's cumbersome, it's a beast. I showed you how you can actually implement good privileged access security and track it. You will know when anyone is granted privileges. But we need to go beyond privileged access. We also need to look at user account security, passwords, resource access. I showed you how to do all of these. Not only did I show you, I gave you a solution that you can go to free of charge, and you can click on any one of these, and you can do exactly what I just did. Every single one of these areas helps you implement this level of security. We've given you all the resources. All you have to do now is use them. So I really hope this information today was helpful for you. We at ADManager want to thank you so much for your dedication and your time today. We know it's difficult to get away, so the little bit of time that we could get from you is very valuable to us. If you have any questions for me or anyone else, you can contact the events team, contact anyone else at ADManager, or contact me. That's my email address. I am more than willing and happy to help you secure your Active Directory environment. I just got inquiries from Poland and in Portugal after my last couple of weeks of being there, and I'm trying desperately to help the administrators around the world. Please email me. It's part of my job is to help you understand and implement good security and become more efficient. I think in the background, I've been trying to watch the questions coming through. Everyone's questions have been answered. Again, if we didn't get to your question, please email us, look for the response from us. We will be having more webinars. We will be having more seminars. We will be having more user conferences in your area as the year goes on. Please keep an eye out for those emails. Please come to our blogs. So this is going to conclude our webinar. I'm going to let you get back to your day. Hopefully this was good information for you. Hopefully this is information that you can not only think about, but actually engage with. We've given you the solutions. We've given you all the tools that you need. Please go and implement the tools so that you can get better control over security. For myself and the rest of the Active Directory Solutions team here at ADManager, thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your day. And until next time, goodbye.